truth is, a lot of people cry while watching movies. It's nothing new, it's nothing special. I mean, it's not just me, right? A lot of people also cry while watching movies. You heard that, Mom? It's not just me, Mom! The fact that people cry while watching movies doesn't mean they are weak. It doesn't mean that they are inferior to anyone else. It just means that maybe they are more sympathetic, maybe they are more emotional, or maybe their tear glands just work better. Regardless of what the reason is, if you don't cry while watching movies, it's totally fine. There is nothing wrong if you don't cry while watching movies, but you probably had a really hard life. So with all of that said, I'm going to be talking about the movies that made me cry the most. I'm not talking about the movies that made me drop a tear. I'm talking about the movies that made me create a freaking tsunami. I'm talking about that level. Brokeback Mountain. I know what you're thinking. That gay cowboy movie. How dare you say that? It is a gay cowboy movie, but it's so much more than that. It's about an emotional connection that slowly develops between two of these people, but they have to hide that connection from the world, and it shows how that connection changes and evolves throughout different phases of their lives. And I think that this movie may not make you cry that much, but it's going to leave you feeling very down and feeling a sense of bitterness in your heart for a very, very long time. I mean, an unhealthy period of time. So if you think that your life is a little bit too happy, feel free to watch this movie. Just go ahead and watch this movie. Next up is a classic that people just like to watch on Christmas. And that movie is It's a Wonderful Life. The difference that this movie has from all the other crying movies is that instead of crying out of sadness or guilt, this movie makes you cry out of happiness. It makes you cry out of joy. Crying while watching this movie is actually a celebration of what makes us human, because there's a scene in this movie where everyone gets together and to help a character, and that scene just warms my heart because it's really nice seeing how a human being cares so much and is so willing to help another human being. It just warms my heart and makes me want to be a better person and do good things, and it makes me want to hug everybody, myself included. Next up on this list is an animated film. That's right, I cry at cartoons, but I don't cry at a sponge living in a pineapple under the sea. I'm talking about Pixar animation. Coco hit me like a train, and Wall-E also made me cry. But I'm talking about the Toy Story series now. The Toy Story series. The first Toy Story did not make me cry. The second Toy Story made me cry a little bit. The fourth Toy Story movie made me cry a lot, but it's the third Toy Story movie.
Excuse me?
Toy Story 3 is the saddest of the bunch, and also I think the most relatable of the bunch, and also the best of the bunch. There's a scene in this movie where all the toys hold hands with each other and they close their eyes and they have accepted the fact that they are going to burn to death. Of course they don't die, it's a kids movie. What do you really expect them to die? I mean, if you imagine if the toys really died in this movie, those kids, they would be traumatized for life. But of course they don't die because it's a kids movie. But what really saddens me is not a fear of death or death itself, but the fact that these characters that we have come to love have already accepted their death and closed their eyes, and all they want is to feel some peace before their death. That is so deep for a kids movie. Nowadays, when I walk on the street and I see a toy on the ground, I feel bad for the toy, honestly. Sometimes I see a piece of cheese left on the ground and I feel bad for that piece of cheese. Now I realize how stupid that sounds. But I do feel bad for cheese. Next up is going to be Steel Magnolias. Steel Magnolias sounds like a flower shop, but it's actually a really good movie. And it stars Julia Roberts. And if you don't know who Julia Roberts is, she has the most cryable acting ever. When she wants the audience to cry, she's going to make it happen. When she wants you to cry, you are going to cry, no questions asked. Julia Roberts' face is like what happens when you put 100 onions together to form a face. Then you get Julia Roberts' face. You just can't help but cry when she wants you to cry. I mean, I cried in Pretty Woman, I cried in Notting Hill, but I cried the absolute worst in Steel Magnolias, at the top spot. The absolute top spot. The movie that made me cry more than any other movie in the world. The movie that made me cry more than Thailand commercials. The movie that made me cry more than Thailand commercials with dogs. That movie is E.T. I have a saying here. Real men don't cry watching Titanic. Real men cry watching E.T. Yes, I said that. And I also cried at Titanic. But that's not the point. The point is, E.T. is the saddest movie ever. And you all know the story of E.T., right? It's about this alien who falls on Earth, and this kid finds this alien, then he hides this alien in his house. You all know the E.T. story. It's a very classic story. And I think you all know where it goes. Of course, there's a part in the movie near the end when the alien has to go back to its planet and the kid has to stay on Earth. That scene is the saddest scene in the history of cinema. Steven Spielberg's direction just makes that scene so tender and gentle. And the acting in this movie is really sad, not just because it is really good. Don't get me wrong, it's very, very good. But what saddens me even more than the acting is the fact that it's a kid. He's too young to have his heart broken. He's a freaking kid and he has to endure the pain of having to leave someone that he really loves. And it really saddens me more than anything else. If you don't cry watching E.T., you are worse than an alien. I'm saying it for real. Like even the alien in the movie cries and you don't cry. You're even worse than E.T.